What the left and right get right and wrong. And if it looks like I'm reading a script, it's because I am reading from an essay that I wrote. And that's because not only do I want to choose my words correctly, but I want to organize the ideas. I don't want to waste people's time. And I also, whatever, here it goes. What the left and right get right and wrong. In a few words, I think it's the failure to calibrate between a time and place to be liberal and a time and place to be conservative. And you need both. You can't have, I wouldn't say so far that you can't have one without the other, but at some point you do need to be liberal and in the sense that you need to be open to new ideas. And it really helps to be empathetic to the plight of others. But at the same time, there's a time and place to be conservative, which, in other words, the way I see it, as being pragmatic, being realistic about what can be done, what cannot be done. And you have to also realize that tolerance has its limits. You can't feel sorry for everybody and everything. You just can't. And what makes things even more confusing is the fact that some people are more hardwired, like neurologically, beyond the psychology. They're neurologically hardwired to be more liberal and open, and some people are more hardwired to be conservative. And I don't want to say closed, but somewhat reserved. And that's why you have people like myself. I consider myself to be socially liberal, but fiscally conservative. That's why I'm pro-abortion. And look, I'll skip the euphemism of pro-choice. Abortion is a horrible procedure, but pragmatically speaking, like in other words, the conservative nature in me understands that it's best to leave abortion legal because you end up creating quite the mess without it. And I don't want to get too caught up with that. And of course, the fact that I am pro-abortion, anybody who's a conservative will say, well, you're not really, you could never say you're a conservative. And by the way, I don't care. I don't care if people think I'm a liberal or a conservative. I don't root myself in that identity, which is another problem that happens. You get people who really, they want to be the conservative. I'm a conservative. And other people, well, I'm a liberal. And, not to make fun of liberals that they're all supposedly gay or wispy, whatever. The point is that you just have these dynamics that we can't override these things. I am positive we can override these things. Now, look, I'm completely off the script, off what I wrote. But I'll refer to it from time to time. Yeah, we can get past these things because, like I said, there is a time and place where you need both. You need to be liberal and open-minded and idealistic and empathetic, but you also need to be conservative and pragmatic and understand that tolerance has its limits. And aside from the fact that people are more hardwired one way or another, people change throughout time. I mean, that's why you have the old saying that if you're not a liberal in your 20s, you have no heart. But if you're not a conservative after your 20s or your 30s, you have no brain. And this also explains why youth is wasted on the young, but I don't want to get too much into that. When I was young, I was very liberal, and the way I felt about things, especially the way I felt about rich people when I was younger, and I thought they were all greedy and they were all out to get you and stuff like that. Even though I wanted to start a business, I always wanted to have my own business. But watching rich people, especially people like Donald Trump, they really left a bad taste in my mouth. I admired Donald Trump actually when I was in junior high, like when I first was made aware of him, that he was like this rich guy, and I thought he was the richest man in the world, when I was like in sixth grade or whatever, or seventh grade, whenever it was that. But then when I saw the way he treated his first wife and his family, I thought that was disgusting, and not to get into the personal life of this guy. And then the way he was just buying up all these things and stuff like that. And I remember talking to a friend of mine and telling him, I think people like Donald Trump, you got to put a limit on how much they can buy. And my friend was like, wow, you sound like a communist. I was like, no, I'm not that thing that my parents fled from in Cuba. And those instincts to want to solve problems, sometimes they will be liberal in nature and sometimes they'll be conservative in nature. Look, one thing that liberals will say I'm not a liberal is because of the fact that I'm also pro-death penalty. And not only liberals, I thought I was a libertarian for a little while, but I was quickly told by other libertarians that if you support the death penalty, you can never be a libertarian. And I was like, you know what? I don't care. Cancel my Libertarian Party membership. Don't care. We need the death penalty. Now, just because we have the death penalty doesn't mean you have to apply it all the time. But there are people who you're never going to change for sure. People who are just psychopaths. And the recidivism rate, I believe, for people who have murdered and they're given a second chance, especially given a second chance way too soon, they murder again, and it's one too many as far as I'm concerned. And it's well more than one. It's well more than one ex-con who gets let back out onto the streets and murders again. More than one per year for sure. And without getting too much into the death penalty, because people think that when you talk about the death penalty, that's like code for racism, which is ridiculous. The two of the people in my head, when I think about who justify the death penalty, are Nicholas Cruz, the Parkland shooter, and Dylan Roof, the white supremacist kid. I guess he was. If he wasn't a kid, he looks like one. Who shot up and killed, I forgot how many Black Americans at a black church, a historical black church. Why are we keeping these people alive? There's no need. There's no need. And this whole, I understand the principle that, I forgot how it goes, but how a society treats its prisoners speaks a lot about the society itself. And it's also the way you would say that with the poor, which I kind of agree. I'm more concerned with how society treats its poor than how society treats its irredeemable, murderous psychopaths. We need to eliminate those people. And it's not even a matter of justice, let alone revenge. It's just a matter of practicality. You're not going to change these people. They're going to more than likely kill again. The chances of someone like Nicholas Cruz ever being let out back into society, the chances of him murdering again are very high. Oh, and the last one, Ted Bundy. Look up the story of Ted Bundy. How he escaped prison, hitchhiked across the country, and murdered again. So, yeah, anyway, I'm getting a little sidetracked here, completely off the script. But there's going to be more videos of this, and particularly on this topic of like what the left and right get right and wrong that I really want to talk about. And without making this video too long, I know that we can solve these problems that we have. The hyper polarization that I never remember seeing in this country, at least in my life. From what I understand, 1968, if you look at it, there's a pretty good documentary, despite that it was made by CNN. Despite that it was made by CNN, there's a documentary, I believe, called 1968. And when I saw that, I was like, oh, wow, that put 2020, last year, into perspective. And in 1968, all that division was pretty justified. Like, I thoroughly disagree with the organization Black Lives Matter. But when I look at the Black Panthers, I can see why they existed. I can totally see why someone like Malcolm X was saying by any means necessary back in the 1960s. Now, that's the problem. The pendulum then swings. Someone like Malcolm X, in his understandable, almost justifiable, I'll use the word hatred for whites that he had. Who did he turn to? Fidel Castro. And also the Nation of Islam. That did him in. We don't need to be this polarized. And the problem is that the polarization, clearly, I mean, I know I'm not breaking any new ground by saying this. It's being driven by people who benefit from the polarization. It's being driven by people who know that they're doing wrong. And of course, the villains that you always get, the villain that the right looks at is George Soros, and yeah, not a good guy. And the villain that the left would have, well, in Donald Trump, again, not a good guy either, or the Koch brothers at one point, whatever. There are people who definitely profit from the chaos, and they love it too. I think someone like Donald Trump feeds off the chaos. And that's where the whole liberal, conservative, left-right divide, really it stems from. It's rooted in the eternal balance between chaos and order, creation and destruction. The fact that you cannot create something without destroying something else. It's impossible. There's no way you can use a hammer that has a wooden handle without cutting down a tree. Or I think a more appropriate analogy would be an axe with a wooden handle without chopping down a tree. It's like, it's this cyclical thing. It's the yin and yang. It's what Lao Tzu so astutely observed long before Jesus Christ was even born. And that's why you have Taoism and you have the yin and yang and all that. And bottom line, don't want to make this video too long. I believe there is hope for this incredible divide. And I'm wondering if I'm wondering if, especially with Jussie Smollett, the reason why I mentioned him in my last video and I'll mention him again now is because I wonder if that's the tipping point already. Something so ridiculous as what he did, though it really had a bad, because my problem with Jussie Smollett wasn't so much that this guy was doing this to advance his own career. In his trying to advance his own career, he was trying to make the United States seem so much worse than it is. And let's say he would have gotten away with it. Let's say nobody would have figured it out. Think about that. Think about how many people would have continued justifying themselves and, oh, this is such a white supremacist country. We need to tear everything down. That's the real danger I see with what Jussie Smollett did, especially had he gotten away with it. And but I think now that has happened, and even the silence you hear from so many people, the deafening silence from the people who actually fell for it and supported it and were so quick to just admonish one half of the country, like the other, and just, you're all racists. This is what happens. I think it's reached its fever pitch. It's reached its boiling point. I can only hope. Anyway, I'll keep making more videos like this, whether people watch them or not. But if you did watch this and you liked it, please give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel and check out. No, don't do that. That sounds kind of racist. Check out the links down below for my art that I'm trying to sell in order to support this channel. And thanks for watching.